He's going to provide the IVAS update. So Jason, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We got you.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm Jason Regnier. I'm the technical director for IVAS, the Integrated Visual Augmentation System. So I've been fortunate enough to be here since the beginning of this. And prior to IVAS, I did 10 years Net Warrior and got us through the transition into the TAC ecosphere and running ATAC on the Net Warrior systems. So as I came into IVAS, that obviously was one of my primary goals, was to make sure we could also use TAC as we know it and bring any new systems in line with the ecosphere that all of you are here seeing about. I wish I were there with you, by the way. It's a lot more fun than what I'm doing. So moving on, a little bit about IVAS itself. So IVAS is a single program, a single platform that allows the soldiers to fight, rehearse, and train. So it gives them decision-making, target acquisition, target engagement, and then the situational awareness that you get through services from TAC. So this is kind of an image of what the last rounds of testing that we've done. It mounts over the helmet with straps and then uses batteries and radios and kind of similar systems to Net Warrior. And then we have on the chest, you'll see the puck there, which is how you control the functions and features that are going on up in the integrated visor system. So this is an augmented reality system where you see through it and it projects the TAC imagery in 3 dimensions on that display screen. So as we go forward, I'll show you a little bit about that. So the configuration that we have for the Army is the upper left corner there. Every soldier gets a HUD and a puck, a heads-up display, and then the puck on-body computer, and has a cable between them, and then has a cable that goes down to the batteries. So we're using the Army's conformal wearable batteries. We issue them with 3 per soldier. Usually you're using one's in transit and one's on the charger. We also have the network components, some augmented compute capability in what we call the tactical cloud package at the company level that has augmented computing as well as provisioning and a place where a commander would use, for example, WinTAC to set up a mission, which would be broadcast down to the IVAS combat systems for the dismounted soldiers to go into combat. So those the TCP package we have there, we mount it on the different vehicles throughout the Army. A couple of other aspects of the IVAS program on the upper right-hand corner was, as we said, it's fight, rehearse, and train. Part of the training aspect of it is synthetic training environment. And the concept of the Army had for IVAS was to use the same system to train and to fight. So the synthetic training is the Squad Immersive Virtual Trainer. So it is a suite of software on the IVAS, as well as a kit to instrument the weapons. So they have the recoil of shooting when you're pulling the trigger, so the system knows when you fired. And I'll show a bit more about that. But the bottom line in it is very much a way to train against a virtual enemy that looks the same size, shape, and has artificial intelligence kinds of reactions that you would see. So you're able to train soldiers on battle drills and coordinating movements using the IVAS system itself. A few other technologies were a squad performance model that we developed to try to work on next generation readiness tools for the Army. And then the bottom right is adaptive squad architecture. This is really about controlling the standards and interfaces for both software and hardware, cables, connectors, and things like that. So we're getting a more robust architecture spread throughout all the products that are made by PEO Soldier for Army units. So we have standard connections and are able to compete different components as needed. So the premise of IVAS, the main mission, is to be able to see in the dark, right? It's night vision capability. So what you see here is what a soldier sees looking through the visor itself. So in the upper section, you'll see a compass heading, a compass ring, and on there we will have the TAC markers that you would see. And then what you're seeing is a fusion of both low light sensor capability along with thermal capability. So the sensor has 2 low light sensors that are much smaller than the standard image intensifiers we know now, the green, night vision tubes that we use now. The premise of IVAS is, could we do it smaller? So we're using low light technology instead of image intensifiers, and then we're fusing that with thermal imagery. And we're kind of representing that with the white outline. You can do an outline mode in thermal like this, or you can do standard thermal, black hot, white hot type imagery, but they're fused together to give you this kind of night vision fighting capability. So one of the main tenets, of course, was to be able to use TAC and be able to be interoperable with that. So the idea here, though, the next level we want to take it is in the upper right-hand corner is ATAC as we know it. And then within IVAS, it's the ability to use the 3D maps and be able to collaboratively share and plan and everyone see the same view. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see there where we've anchored that image on one of those QR codes and everyone can see basically the same image. You come up with a plan. Or you can bring it up in your heads-up display per the left where it's up as like a map, the way you would normally look at a map and make plans or make changes based on fragos from your initial mission that you have while you're out there. So uses all the standard things in TAC that you're all familiar with and the same lexicon and software for that. A key point though is I am calling it TAC and I would love to use any other word because it's not ATAC. We don't run Android on our systems. They're more of a Windows-based system because we're based off Microsoft's HoloLens architecture, which is closer to Windows. It's more of a Windows-based, but it's not really WinTAC. We're not running WinTAC. It's kind of a version of ATAC that runs on a HoloLens. So HTAC might be the closest word for it, but the principle is being interoperable with all things from the tactical assault kit. So when you bring it up, for example, this is what you would see, the common picture, and then these are represented in augmented reality out in front of you where they would be spatially as well. And then you can see in the bottom there is the map. If the user brought up the map itself to have kind of the top-down look, you can. But those markers for friendly units, as well as the enemy markers that have been placed and neutrals, things like that, you would see them out in real time in space where they are as you swing your head around. You also see them up in your compass ring. If you don't want all the markers or the metadata, you can change the view where they're just up in the upper compass ring up on the heading, and you can highlight those as needed to get the data of what's embedded in there. A few other things we do within IVAS is the ability to bring up rapid target engagement where we have the thermal weapon sight on the mounted on the weapon is able to be viewed in your heads-up display. So this kind of shows what the soldier would see, and he's looking around that corner. And so over there in the distance is a burning vehicle, and next to it is a person walking, and you can kind of see how the thermal capability of that weapon would bring out the two, and you could differentiate between them and be able to do that kind of function, or have it where that reticle is up in your heads-up display. So as you raise your weapon, you're able to rapidly engage without having to actually cheat the weapon, because you'll be able to see where the imagery is coming from the weapon as well as the reticle for where the rounds are going as you're engaging targets. And then just to give you an idea of what we were after and why we did IVAS, let me give you a bit of a view here. So this is the battlefield of the future. It's going to be dirty, it's going to be messy and dangerous. And as you know, this is what we're seeing. And the intent of IVAS is to give our soldiers a competitive overmatch with the ability to see better and fight better using all of those capabilities, as well as the situational awareness we get from TAC. So this is a typical kind of view. And this is what we have right now. There are some good Army systems out there that use the image intensifiers, and there is now the ENVG that has a 40-degree field of view in image intensifier you see here, along with the square, which is a 32 by 24 thermal image. And there's a few thousands of these out now. These are being issued. And so our job was to, what we were tasked with is, could we do better than this? So our intent then was to see what we could do to increase the field of view. For IVAS's main purpose is close combat. That was the idea of how do we see wider, how do we see the enemy first? Because that's where America had seen a lot of its casualties, was in close combat engagements. And IVAS is principally designed to help with that. So this is where we are now. And this is where we were with our first military form factor capability set. And this was about a year ago. So we've changed to what we were looking for, an 80-degree wide field of view. And we want to get more vertical than this, but this is where we were at the time. You can see the yellow circle of the original image I showed. And what you can see now in the bottom left-hand corner is that car and that person that weren't visible in the original one. And then right there, you can see that car. And then where we're headed now, what we've got now in heading up into our final test is this. We ended up with a 40-degree field of view. So we encompass all that you would see normally in your image intensifiers, plus we're getting out to 70 degrees wide with the low light. And then we have a 55-degree between the green lines of a thermal overlay. So quite an advancement for us. And then just to give everyone a status from IVAS, we had expected to be in test this particular summer, and we had some issues. And just to give you an idea, the bottom line issue is we wanted to get to this 80-degree wide field of view here. Those last 5 degrees on either side were really difficult, because what this is waveguide technology, where the challenge is being able to spread the light over a wide field of view and maintain the right kind of light level and image performance. And we found I think maybe the edge of the physics limits on that. So what we're now doing, we're doing a change now. We halted our initial test our final test that we were going to run this summer, and we've moved it to coming up this next year in FY22. So, and what we did is, you see here the blue lines, we pulled the system in 5 degrees on either side. So we now have a 70-degree field of view instead of 80, and finding that really isn't very noticeable at all, and still gets us a much more clear picture. That last 5 degrees was exponentially harder to get on either side. So we're quite happy with how this is looking now. We've got our first few new prototypes in, giving us good imagery that we wanted to see. And we are heading into test this summer, coming up this year in 22. So that is the basic overview of where we are and what happened and what's going on with IVAS. And the main point of it was staying in sync with TAC. One other recent update, I think, is that we just in the past 2 months, we've updated to the current version of TAC that everyone else is running, the core software for communications modules and the other pieces that go in there. So we have Microsoft as our prime contractor, a non-traditional vendor, and they did a good job pulling this in, and our TAC functions are where we want them to be and are able to help the soldiers do everything you want to be able to do here with TAC capability. So that's an update on the program. I think I can answer questions or anything else we need. I know they gave me about an hour to talk, but I don't have that much else to say other than this, where I think I'd rather take questions if there are any.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Any questions in the audience? Got one coming here, Jason. Hold on.
Okay.
So I'm just curious to know if the hardware is still the HoloLens 2, or if you guys are creating something different based on that.
So the initial prototypes were all based on HoloLens 2, yes. So, but these new military form factors are more or less what you would call HoloLens 3, although they don't have a commercial equivalent for this yet. So we are going a generation past the HoloLens 2 because of our wider field of view, as well as the more vertical. So it does change the hardware, but it's still made in the same factories and the same areas. We just have expanded that. And for Microsoft, it was their business opportunity as well to make a product for the military, as well as to go to the basically HoloLens generation 3 if they end up commercializing and productizing this for industrial use or whatever other purposes they want to use the base hardware for. There are still military aspects, such as the sensors and other things, that are restricted to military use only. But this is past the HoloLens 2.
Next question. How does the Army plan to field IVAS compared to fielding Net Warrior to IBCTs?
So My understanding from what the fielding guys are telling me is that you'll either get one or the other. There, you won't get both. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. You're not going to have both IVAS and NetWarrior. We will be interoperable though with units that have NetWarrior and IVAS. The messages and the data will flow between the two, and we can see it on both systems. My personal guess is that they'll echelon the NetWarriors to other units as they begin fielding IVAS as a newer technology. And part of the reason for that, let me just say this: as much as we love NetWarriors, as that's what I started most of my big chunk of my career in, this is meant to take us to the next generation where we don't have to look down at the phone. The idea is to be able to see the same data out in front of you and not have the look down capability. So that's the premise that we're working on and the technology that we're advancing. And then for what it's worth for the audience, this past summer, the NetWarrior and IVAS were now all in the same program management office here at PEO Soldier. So we're combined. We use that, and a lot of the stuff is common, same batteries, same chargers and technology, a lot of the same cables, things like that. We're trying to leverage the two across there to make compatible products that take advantage of things that have already been done. So does that answer your question?
Yes, he said it did. I'm curious, what types of entity, like TAC entities, are you planning to support in the display? Like I see you've got, looks like 25 points up there, but do you also plan support for like routes or other types of markup?
Yeah, we plan to be able to do all the what you would see in ATAC makes, for our purposes, makes sense. We should be able to see all the same look and feel within IVAS. So routes, phase lines, all those kinds of things that soldiers are doing. The only thing we're behind on that is not done yet within IVAS is the chem lights themselves. But we have all the basic 2020, 25 entities, phase lines, routes, markers, all that. It's just the chem light process is still being worked. And then the other tools that are in ATAC itself, measurement tools, things like that, we have almost all of those as well, I think are complete and look very much like this. So we couldn't do, I would love to have done a direct drop of just ATAC running that, but since we don't run Android on the HoloLens systems, it was not, we couldn't do a direct lift. And then there's a bunch of functions that are occurring, for example, in WinTAC that don't make sense for dismounted soldiers. So we're not really running WinTAC exactly either. So it's a bit of a, we're trying to get closer and closer towards ATAC as we go along so that it will look just like that and that the training would be the same.
I have a question about what's it like the controller for the IVAS, like the puck controller versus the eye tracking. What's the status on that?
So we are not using the eye tracking for that. So the puck controller, the buttons on there actually is working really well. So you have the ability to move the mouse left and right and up and down and kind of track like that, to use it as a mouse pointer. So we don't have the keyboards you would get on a smartphone or things like that, but we use the same pre-selected, pre-written messages that ATAC has down in the right-hand corners when you're doing messaging, things like that. So the buttons you see there on the puck have been sufficient to do everything we need to do within, kind of riflemen through squad leader, team leader kind of operations. You can actually do an entire, let's say, mission plan. It's really hard. It's a lot easier to go to use WinTAC and use a laptop, but you can do it. One of the guys did do it, and it does work. All the functions are there. It's just a little harder because you don't have a keyboard.
I'm curious about the processing capability of the puck. What actually is the puck?
It's Microsoft has some custom silicon they use, and I think within there, I could be wrong, but I need to get back on it. I believe we're using, I can't remember what the name of the processor is. It's not like an Intel. It's Snapdragons, or it's one of the higher end processors that does it. What's important with that is we have some capacity there for general purpose processing on the puck. a lot of the main computing is imagery, of course. That's the hard part. So up in the HUD itself is where the holographic projection units are that use specific processing for the visual information. So a lot of that's processed up there, runs down the cable, and then a lot of the fusion occurs, and then the overlay with the TAC data and the processors on there in the puck itself. I don't know off the top of my head. I can't tell you what the name of the processor is. I might have to get back to that one.
Hey, so you talked a little bit about this being kind of a mix of ATAC and WinTAC. Is there an intent to kind of make a release or something that's available for folks to kind of play with and maybe use it on like a HoloLens?
So the short answer is we're intending to do a software development kit so that people can make apps for IVAS in the long run, much like people do plugins for ATAC. So yes, we do plan to get to that. We believe that what we've done should be backwards compatible to some degree with the HoloLens 2. And again, if they put out a commercial HoloLens 3 based on this, which would not have, for example, the sensors on the top, but might have all the same processing and all that. We're encouraging them to do that. If they do all that, then I think there'd be no issue with having a kit where you could make software and try it and do that. So to some degree, there is some compatibility with the 2, with HoloLens 2, but it's not obviously perfect because we got a lot of other functions we do now.
All right, Jason, I'm gonna, if I can, queue up a few questions that we have online for you. I've got 2 that are somewhat similar. So does the display perform well in daylight? If so, can you speak to how the improved visualization is outdoors in daylight? And then the second question related is any issues of light leaking from the side of the display? I assume that would be at night.
Right. So on the light leaking from the side, let me answer that one first. So we have a requirement to be light secure at night. So there is a baffle around it, and we have solved that, and we're passing the light security test. That is a very specific test for both aided and unaided. So yeah, we have to pass that to be able to field it. Otherwise, we turn the guys into targets. So the baffle, the rubber gasket that goes around, has been solving that problem for us, and we are passing that. Then the other question, sorry, was what was the other one?
The other question was how does it do in daylight?
Oh, daylight, yeah. So we do have a requirement to be able to run in daylight, yes. And so up through CS3, we weren't there. So we have in this current generation, the 4th generation as we're going, yes, we are now meeting the requirement to run in daytime without an issue. And we were not there. And if you ever see some of the older reports, we were certainly not there when we didn't plan to be. It took several stages to get up to the brightness level. So we now have a brightness level that is easily viewable in the daytime. I've done it myself where we've gone outside and generated out on the brightest sunny days here in October. And we're able to generate and see like a synthetic enemy hiding behind Jersey barriers, and you would engage them with the synthetic training kit and the air rifle kind of approach. And yeah, it worked great outside. So we're having that. And then you can see the TAC data as well, the TAC markers. So that was a challenge. It was very difficult to get the brightness high enough. Certainly that was a technical challenge, but we did reach that. And we have a metric and measurements we have that are specifications. They have to reach a certain number of brightness, foot candle and lumens and other measurements we take. So we are there. Looks good. Took a long time though.
Okay, and so I'm going to transition back to the audience here. But as I do that, I have a question from some operational feedback. What were some of the key themes of feedback from the soldiers involved in testing?
Well, some of the key themes we had was navigation speed was greatly enhanced. So we were running on Army navigation qualification courses, and we would run baseline soldiers through, and then we'd run them through with IVAS. So they were using TAC and navigating with that and doing markers. And we were setting course records with that. We were really proud of that. It was very exciting to see how much they, like as opposed to, the map and compass approach where they'd have to stop and do all that. So with IVAS using TAC capability for markers and things. Yeah, it was tremendous. So the main theme on maneuverability for that was great. The information also was great. We had issues with our display, as I pointed out. So we had a lot of negative feedback on the older one as we were trying to fix that. So we halted the test. But from TAC point of view, we got big thumbs up. They liked it a lot, and it did everything, as you guys know, what TAC does and why they like it. The other themes we had were the ability to have that wide field of view was important, and also the rapid target engagement, where you could have that narrow field of view of the weapon in the thermal weapon sight, and to be able to bring that up in the same display was a key factor. Was very important. We had some other feedback. Obviously, you see from this one, there's that cable that's sticking out, which we have a new approach for that. We're going to be wrapping that around a bit better so it doesn't become a snag hazard. There's just some other kind of good feedback we got from the soldiers. We knew that one anyway, but we got some ideas on how they wanted to see it done. We did a lot of soldier-centered design, where we let the soldiers in from the very beginning of the program to help us design how that would go and what would make sense for the physical design of it. So the main themes were and then I think the last thing was the fusion of the thermal and low light worked very well. And they're able to adjust that imagery information so that you can do different modes, either outline mode, or you can do black hot or white hot. All the standard things people do with thermal weapon sights, you can now do based on a head-mounted thermal camera. So this is the first time, or one of the first times, you're seeing that kind of capability, and then fused with low light as well. So those are all the good, I think, positive things we were seeing, and some of the things we need to work on, the challenges.
This isn't a very technical question, but how does it work with the soldiers with high physical activity? I imagine you got this rubber baffle around your face, and either in cold weather or very hot weather, the display could fog up. Is there any issues with that?
It actually was, we were just talking about that. So that was actually my number one concern as the tech director, was just fogging of the goggles. As soon as they fogged over, they're all going to take them off and they're going to be useless. So it turns out, much to my surprise, there are some coatings, some commercial coatings that work astonishingly well. And when I say astonishingly, we've had 200 soldiers at a time going through Fort Benning at 95 degrees in 100% humidity, and we're not getting fogging. So that was really, really important. And Microsoft did a very good job finding the right kinds of coatings for both the front and the back of that glass, because yeah, your face will get very sweaty. And your intuition is correct. That baffle around there can kind of magnify that heat, but we are not getting fogging, and I was surprised about that, but I'm very happy that that was never one of the problems we had. So for what it's worth, there are some coatings that are amazing, and they work.
So Jason, quick follow-up to that from an online participant. So interoperability with a gas mask or pro mask, any research or anything done with that?
Yes, so we actually did the test with that, and I was assuming that we would not pass like a lot of Army equipment, but it did work. It worked actually incredibly well. So we were at Fort Bragg, and they brought out a whole set, and we took a squad and had everybody put on the class 4 and other, whatever it was, MOP 4 gear, and that head, and you could see it just fine through the lenses of the MOP gear. So yeah, it worked with the NBC gear. I wasn't sure that it would, because it moves it slightly further away from your face, and your eye distance is an important factor in what you can see. But nope, they did it. They liked it. I did it myself. I was surprised, but yep, we could still see it. And so you could certainly navigate and use it and fight with it.
So some more questions on some of the training and component use. So has IVAS training component been tested? For which battle drills has the IVAS device been tested? And then to follow up to that, we had a specific question about anything with airborne.
Okay, so we do need to be air assault qualified. We've got to be able to do that. So it's not airborne. You're not going to parachute wearing this. It has to be in the rucksack, kind of like a NetWarrior and some of the other systems. Well, actually, there's some systems you can parachute with. I shouldn't say that. So ours is not airborne, where you're not going to parachute with this on. You got to put it on when you land. But we should be able to do air assault where they're in the helicopters and able to do that. And I don't expect any issue with that. What was the other question? I'm sorry, the one right before that.
So it looks like it was just related to IVAS training.
Oh yeah, the training, the battle drills. So at this point, we've only accomplished to a satisfactory degree battle drill 6, which is the indoor, close quarter battle. That is the battle drill that we're able to conduct right now with regularity. And I don't think I have a picture of that one in here, do I? Nope, I didn't. I should have put that in here. And then you can rehearse it, and then you can go back and do an after action review to see, what could be done better, and you do it over and over again. So that's the main one we have. The other battle drills, 1 through 11, we still have work to do on those. And mostly it was because the outdoor performance in the older system was not good enough to do anything outdoors. But now that we have the brighter system, we're going to start, the PMs that do the synthetic training environment are going to start working that process, and we'll begin to upgrade and be able to address the other battle drills as well. So we had a technology issue that was stopping us from getting there, and it was really the brightness. You just couldn't do it outdoors. But now that we've got that, I think we're going to get there.
Okay, another vision-based question. Compared to existing capabilities and issues, any improvement on latency and or parallax with respect to natural vision, IR image?
So the short answer is yes, we have some advantages with IVAS. And here's basically what we think about. With image intensifiers, the tubes are further out, and so you get more of that parallax problem because you're looking through the tube, and you kind of, it can be, until you get used to it, it can be a little harder to walk. With these sensors so much closer to your face, and we have them generally centered right above your eyes, the 2 low lights, when you have the low lights and you've got light to maneuver with that, you have stereo vision, and you have that ability to see terrain and have the parallax too. There's also a lot of software correction we do for parallax as well to make sure that you're able to, where your hand is in thermal and you're grabbing where there's a doorknob, you can see that it actually works. So that definitely was a big challenge. And Microsoft has some algorithms and capability, and they do a lot of adjustments so that I feel we've solved that one. And it's much, much better for the parallax capability that you have, the problems that you have with other Army systems that don't have, that aren't quite as close to the eye, for example, or don't have a software correction capability like this one does. So I'm very happy with how that looks. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. The only challenge you have is if you're in like a no light situation where the low light cameras aren't working, you have the thermal is it's high resolution and it's really good, and you get a lot of feel for it, but it's still only a single camera. So you have a loss of some depth perception with that, but that's pretty standard for, PVS 14s and other systems as well.
So next question, outside of, I suppose, what's already in the HUD, what external sensors have been tested or indoor connected? And the example here was for rangefinders.
I don't have any other external systems connected at this point. We have to be able to deal with GPS, and we have a port for that. And when they do, more advanced military GPS, we have the things built to do with that. We haven't started a lot of that work yet, so I don't have interfaces to other range finding equipment at this point. Well, I should say that other than what's coming off of the thermal weapon sight and the ability to do there, but we don't do it. I guess I think I know what you're asking, so I don't do that just yet, not yet.
So question about field of view. What was done by Microsoft to alter the waveguides to allow the acceptable wider field of view that was required? Was this an issue before field testing began, or did it emerge during the field testing?
It was an issue before. We just weren't sure how bad it was. and whether it would be what we were seeing is dark spots in the older version, and they were we weren't sure how bad that would be for the user, but they were just too much. They were so much so that we halted the test. And the answer to the question is Microsoft redesigned the waveguides themselves and has built new ones. So that took about 8 months. So that's kind of the cycle which moved us from testing late this past July. We've now moved that to May, and it was just to be able to respin that hardware and make new waveguides that were better. So we brought it from an 80-degree field of view down to 70, and that seems to have solved the problem. We've seen the first prototype in, and it looks much, much better. So all the black spots and the dark shapes are gone now. It's much more uniform. The uniformity measurement was the key one. It was just not very uniform, and now it is. That's what we were doing, and we knew it wouldn't be, but we weren't sure really how bad. All we had was modeling data, and until you actually build one and try it and then go out and see what the forest and hilly terrain or anything, until you see it, you don't really know. You can model it, but you can't do it until a human puts it on and tries it, and the soldiers were convinced it was not ready to go.
So you mentioned
yeah.
You mentioned the snag hazard. Any look at going wireless?
No, not at this point. We were looking though at perhaps doing fiber optic instead of copper cabling at some point, and maybe in the future to get it smaller. But there's a lot of information that needs to come down, and trying to do that wirelessly that might be a bit much. The problem too is you need enough power up in the HUD. And so then we'd have to put the batteries up on the helmet and all that. And if you're running a cable for power, you might as well run signal back down there too. So probably not at least not in the near term. I don't expect we're going to have wireless everywhere. So we do have some wireless capability, like for example, the thermal weapon sight to the HUD, that is done wirelessly. There's not a cable to the weapon. So we are getting that video feed in there, but it's much more complicated what's coming from the HUD to the puck and back up, that we still need a cable there. We don't like it, but we need it.
Thank you. My question is more around whether or not our partner forces around the globe are going to get this sort of technology. Is this an ITAR rated program, or what are the chances the Canadians or the Australians or anywhere around the world gets to use this technology?
It is an ITAR restricted program. However, we are preparing for foreign military sales or anything else. Yeah, we think that allied units, it would make a lot of sense that they would be able to take advantage of this. And I think it would increase the sales base as well as other users and people that develop apps and things like for TAC and the TAC ecosphere. That, yeah, we would, this is one we're definitely having prepared for international sales to allies. So other way to say it too is it is ITAR restricted, but it is not necessarily, I'm not sure what the right word is. It doesn't have any critical materials in it, so that it is something we could sell as a military product to other nations. There doesn't have stealth material. You can't sell stealth fighter, stuff like that. But this one we can definitely sell overseas.
Okay, so another question, does the SLAM work outside in bright days and or at night?
So yes, I think if I understand the SLAM right, how HoloLens 2 works, so yes, it does.
Well, Jason, I think we picked your brain quite a bit there. Much appreciated. I believe that's it for the questions. So a round of applause for Mr. Regnier.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it, everybody.
And we'll take a few minute break here and reconvene at 1400 for the Trailblazer talk.